Hey everybody, Michael Snyder here, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 5th, and right now we're looking at the infrared satellite imagery here. You can see our atmospheric river diving down through Washington into Oregon this morning. Look at all this cold air spilling out over the Gulf of Alaska. It's going to come right back into the Pacific Northwest here. It's going to continue our showery precipitation here on in through the next couple of days. There is a thunderstorm threat, mainly along the coastline. You can see that deep low pressure system that brought us our strong winds across the area last night here. You can see it develop there and deepen as it moved across British Columbia in towards Alberta here. Very powerful low pressure system here. We'll take a look at the extended forecast near the end of the run here as well, and we're trying to pinpoint what kind of snowfall amounts we can expect for the lowlands, as the mountains are going to get pretty good precipitation amounts in the form of snow here for the next couple of days. Now take a look last night. We had over 300,000 people without power across the state, mainly through western Washington, with those savage winds moving across the area here. I just wish we would have put this wind advisory information out probably a little bit earlier. They put it out yesterday morning, and I think it could have been put out when Portland put theirs out the previous day. But anyway, now taking a look across the Northwest, you're going to see the winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, high wind warnings for almost the entire state of Montana, winter storm warnings all the way down through the Sierra Nevada here. Some wind advisories remain for east portions here as the system still moves across the area. Now taking a look here, this is for Boise, I believe here, but good information here. Check your tire pressure. That when you get this first cold snaps, the tire pressure drops in your cars. Have an emergency car kit, all good stuff to have. Change your tires if you need traction tires, whatever. Watch out for the higher terrain across the passes, etc. Now taking a look here, this is off into Montana. This is Billings, actually, timing of strongest winds. That same system that impacted us in the Pacific Northwest is now moving through Montana here, bringing some big winds across the area. So heads up if you're traveling out there, even through Idaho and western Montana. There's still some gusty winds going on today. Now take a look at this. 2.74 inches at Quileute yesterday, 2.99 at Hokeway, and 1.9 at Bellingham, over 3 inches at Olympia, 3.33, broke that all-time record high of 1.94 for the date set in 1969. Now this is looking at the HRRR 3 km. You can see the atmospheric river coming across Oregon here. This is the simulated infrared satellite imagery. If we go on into the day and evening tonight, you'll see the next system approaching the Washington coast. Another frontal system will slide south, bringing in additional cold air. You can see the cumuliform clouds. Thunderstorm potential exists across the area. Maybe it'll even make it into the inland areas here. But you can see the system generally spinning. This is that modified Arctic low that's going to be setting up off the coast here and trying to bring a little bit of snowfall to some of the lower elevations. Doesn't look like much at all. This is not a big snowfall event coming up here. This Arctic air is just not a true Arctic blast like what we can get in later November, December, and January, but it is bringing cold air into the region. Now, this is looking at the HRRR 3 km. You can see as we go through on in through Sunday, and then as we go on in through Monday, you can see that low spinning off the coastline here, and the thunderstorm potential will continue on in through the day Monday at least. Now this is looking at the European here. Let's back this up. And actually, let's bring this to the newest one. I should be running the 12Z by now, and we are. So let's put this into motion here. And you can see as we go on into Sunday morning, you see some of these low snow levels up towards the San Juans and towards the Vancouver Island area there. And maybe even a little bit of upslope play here. Not upslope at this point yet. I stand corrected. We're not going to get the offshore winds by this time yet. This should start on Monday. But you can see lower snow levels as you go north of Seattle. Now, as we go on in through the day Monday, additional rounds of precipitation around here. And you can even see some snow piling up here in the Kitsap Peninsula. This is kind of an upslope play here on the east slopes here as we get some easterly winds pushing up against the Olympics, kind of a reverse flow than we usually get out of the west here, and that can lead to some snowfall amounts over the Kitsap Peninsula. We'll watch that and see if the European is onto something there. Now, taking a look here, this is snow depth in inches as we put this into motion here. This is the newest European also. You can see some snowfall totals starting to pile up there a little bit. A couple inches can be disruptive there for the Vancouver Metro as some of this cold air starts to leak out as we go on into Monday morning. Then you can see that upslope play maybe for the Kitsap Peninsula. We'll see if the European is onto something here as we go on into tomorrow. And this really, for the Kitsap Peninsula, is like a Monday evening. It looks like a setup there. Now taking a look here, this is 100-meter wind speed. So you can see the westerly winds across the area in the wake of that low pressure system kicking off to our east. As we go through tonight, you can see the southeasterlies return some gusty winds up through the Strait of Georgia, northwest interior here across Whidbey Island and Orcas Island, but nothing like last night. And then you can see the system kind of sliding down the coastline as we go through Sunday night here. And you see these winds start to turn offshore here Sunday night. Fraser River outflow starts up there and then really gets going there on the afternoon, looks like, of Monday. But you can see there's probably going to be some cold air leaking out into the Fraser River Valley towards Bellingham and Vancouver, BC, also as we go through Monday morning. And then you can see that really start to power through here as we go on in through Monday night into Tuesday morning here. And you can see that easterly flow on Monday and Monday afternoon that comes up against the Kitsap Peninsula here. You see the east winds, and so that can cause some upslope flow and some additional precipitation amounts there, which can cool the atmosphere as that precipitation falls. Now look in here. This is for accumulated snowfall. You can see this is all the way through Monday morning here. Look up towards Vancouver, BC. This is the UW model. Bellingham, even all the way down to sea level here. Looks like it's picking up some accumulating snow. Not much for the Puget Sound, but you see just north of Seattle, maybe just a little bit of accumulation going on here. Go a little bit further and see if anything else happens there. This is the end of the run, but you see the good snowfall amounts to the Cascades and the coastal range up through BC, and you can see not much going on for the Columbia Basin there. But we could see some snow flying across much of the Puget Sound. I just don't expect a lot of accumulation, so really get north of Seattle and then north of Whidbey Island up towards Bellingham and Vancouver, BC. We'll continue to watch that as we go here, because anytime you have outflow coming out of the Fraser River Valley, you can get some surprises around the area. Now, looking at yesterday, the models did really quite well with the timing of the system yesterday, but the European was probably doing the best. It was showing the savage surge coming down through the Strait of Juan de Fuca across Whidbey Island into Snohomish County for several days. I mean, it really had a good handle on it. And actually underdid the wind speeds across the Puget Sound here. We ended up getting 50-mile-per-hour gusts. The Nam and the Her were actually doing pretty well with those gust speeds a few days ago. Then they backed off the day coming up to the event here. So it was kind of interesting seeing that. So models on the overall really kind of underdid this system here. Now this is looking at the NAM 3KM. This is yesterday afternoons, and you can see it brought some winds down the Strait of Juan de Fuca, not nearly as strong as what they actually occurred. And it, again, underdid across the central and southern Puget Sound as well. Now, this is why this happened. So this 985 millibar low, look at this thing deep into 984. When you bring the really strong storms up out of the southwest across our region here, they fill rapidly when they come inland. But you'll notice this one is deepening as it moves across. That's because the trajectory of that polar lobe really cast a powerful gradient between some very cold air and some warm, even subtropical air to the south of that atmospheric river. So as you see this move through, look at this tightly packed gradient, just a perfect westerly setup for the Strait of Juan de Fuca. That's why those savage winds came down the Strait of Juan de Fuca in towards Snohomish County. And it's also why we got a really good burst through the southern and central sound as well out of the south and southwest. And then you notice this low continuing to deepen. So when to get a windstorm off the southwest to dive inland like this, it would just simply not be this strong. So we kind of had a great setup here in this polar lobe and just how these winds set up. A very deep low up into British Columbia moving through Alberta there. Now you can see 24-hour precipitation here. This is the European hot off the presses. And you can see we're still going to be getting some rainfall here. Look at Seattle's going to pick up some pretty good amounts as we go through Sunday night into Monday morning. Then you see this kind of transition off to the south and east. But some pretty good amounts coming for the Oregon Cascades, Sierra Nevada. The higher terrain going to build up some snowfall as we go here over the next few days. Now this is looking at 850 millibars, 5,000 feet. You can see the cold air that really can't overspread the region here. Now watch it sag south through British Columbia here. You can see the border of the very cold air, and it tries to move off the continent here. That's what's going to spawn our modified Arctic low off the Washington coast there, and then try to bring some of that moisture back over the top of it. Some cool air will try to be leaking out here across the region and maybe bring that lowland snow we talked about. This is looking at 18,000 feet. Check out this dramatic polar lobe moving down through BC here, and then you can see kind of the reflection there of our modified Arctic low. But look how it swings across the area. Very cold temperatures aloft. Look at that, just perfectly centered over the west coast of North America here in the Pacific Northwest. Pretty intense there. And it finally kicks off as we go through mid and later next week. But let's replay that again. It's a pretty interesting looking scenario here. This nice polar lobe with a pretty good hit, just spending a little bit too much time over water. And that's just it just kind of shows you what's going on with the Arctic air mass. It's just not quite that deep. So it kind of leaks out, and it's not deep enough to really put a true Arctic blast across the Pacific Northwest. But these are temperatures aloft here, and they're pretty cold. But still not a true Arctic blast like what you can see in December and January around these parts. Now, Seattle, Tacoma, you can see some overnight lows below freezing, some highs in the pretty chilly, just in the mid 40s here. Spokane, look at some of these overnight lows way down in the teens here. That goes for a lot of eastern Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, eastern BC as well. So farmers, heads up. Look at some of these temperatures that are coming this week. Boise, same thing here. You can see the cold air settle over the region, but not a true Arctic blast. Mostly these highs will get out of freezing as we go on in through later this week. So not too crazy, but you can see as you go on through eastern British Columbia here in the interior, the air mass is still pretty cold, just not deep enough to really come out over the Pacific Northwest and bring a major snow event. Portland International, some lows going below freezing at times, possibly some of these nights, and some chilly daily highs as well. Now, this is a bigger look at things here. There goes our powerful low dragging across the area, and then you can see the Arctic high settling down over the region here. Again, not an extremely deep air mass here, so it really, the trajectory of the low was not that great for lowland snow across western Washington. And then it kind of kicks off there, and then as we go through the extended, look at this, kind of setting up over us here, and then kind of a reinforcement of this high pressure sitting up over BC. So we may back the precipitation off here for a while, as what's been shown in some of the extended forecasts, but the GFS has been more aggressive with showing some more precipitation signals for us in the extended. Now, this is looking at the GFS this morning. You'll see that system, the first lobe moving through that just blasted us last night, and then you can see that colder air moving out over the Washington coast here, sagging south, ridge kind of building in the wake of that. Arctic high hangs out for a bit, kicks off, and tries to bring systems later on through the period here. More aggressive with these systems than what the European is showing, but we have plenty of time to figure that out. Now look at Stevens Pass. You can see we crashed below freezing early this morning here. We're going to remain so for at least on in through midweek here. Same thing for Mount Hood too, kind of showing the end of that atmospheric river as it's sliding south. Seattle, Tacoma, it is showing a little bit of precipitation accumulation in the form of snowfall here, but it's generally probably going to be too warm at the surface for this to really stick. So maybe some flakes flying, but it's not going to stick much here in the central Puget Sound. Here's Orcas Island, maybe a little bit of precip up there. I might get an inch of snow or so on some of the San Juan Islands out there. Spokane, definitely better chance of snowfall out there, maybe a couple inches, not out of the question. This is Painfield up towards Everett. You may see a little bit of accumulation up there, but again, it's probably going to be a little bit too warm at the surface as things look right now to stick and cause many problems. Bellingham, a little bit better chance up there, closer to that Fraser River Valley, leaking out some of that cold air. And this is Vancouver International, probably a little bit better chance even than Bellingham there. You can see 5 centimeters is 2 inches. Look at that. The control's calling for over 4 inches of snowfall up there, and the ensemble agreement is pretty good here. We'll see how that goes. We'll take a closer look at that with the high resolution models tomorrow morning. And this is out on Vancouver Island, east slopes there. Maybe a couple inches of wet snow out there as well. But again, not a big Arctic blast. We'll see how this trends. A lot of this might melt as it falls. Stevens Pass, though, here's the exception. The mountainous areas here are going to pick up some pretty good snowfall. There's Stevens Pass. You can see the big bump here as we start going on into tonight and on in through Sunday and Monday. Snoqualmie Pass, again, getting some good snow as we go through the weekend into early next week as well. Want to run through the total precipitation amounts here yesterday afternoon all the way down through California. This is really much needed rainfall down there. And I know a lot of forecasters during an El Nino year they expect that we're not going to get much rainfall down through California, but you can see over the next 10 days, it looks like pretty good amounts are going to come down through there. And it falls really through early and mid next week, some pretty good amounts all the way down through Southern California, even into Baja California. Now, this is looking at snow total over the region here, just kind of playing this out for everybody. You can see the snow that piles up across the Cascades, gets down in the Oregon Cascades, Sierra Nevada by early next week, and you can see the Rocky Mountains and off the plains, some of the prairies out there through Canada. Now, taking a look here, 6 to 10 day, you can see the below average signal here across the west. Pretty easy to see there, but look at that, calling for some below average potential here in the precipitation coming up here, folks. And this is 8 to 14 day outlook here. And again, below average precipitation signal. Check out that cool water coming across the central Pacific here, showing you La Nina is still clearly in charge. And that pattern definitely supports that cold water here. The way we're getting the system rolling through here is pretty classic La Nina. The ridge is still over the Pacific Ocean here, and it's allowing that cold air to dive down on us out of the northwest. So again, you can see that here, kind of this ridge setting up out here and just allowing this cold air to move down in this polar lobe to get us here. But again, I hope that we can repeat this pattern as we go on in through December and January. That's if you're a snow lover down to sea level anyway, because this would be much more favorable later on in the season. We're still a little bit early in the season. The Arctic air mass not quite that deep to really bring us a significant lowland snowfall across Pacific Northwest. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. We'll take a look at this again tomorrow. We'll look at some more high resolution models, and we will check out what, if anything, has changed and what kind of totals we can expect and who might be the lucky ones with that as well. So yeah, hopefully you guys are getting your power back here over the next few hours. I know a lot of people were out without power last night. I drove around a bit, and I'd never lost power, but almost every place around me was without power. It was pretty dark out there. So kind of got lucky in that respect, but there was a lot of people out of power last night, a lot of tree damage I saw also. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. You get your power back, and we'll do this again tomorrow.